Ultimately came down to bad coaching and horrible defense. The Indiana Fever had no plan, no idea what the hell they were going to do with the ball screen action in the first half. They were icing the ball screen with the guard sending her to the big could not contain. The bigs played horrible pick and roll ball screen action defense in the first half. Olivia Miles getting layups left and right, just layup after layup after layup. Why does the girl have to score 23 points before you say, hey, I got a team? Courtney Williams went off. Nafisa Collier had a big-time second half. But you see, you had more success. You had a chance to win this game in the second half when you got the ball out of her hands. They don't allow Caitlin Clark to play one-on-one all game. Why are we allowing Olivia? And this is what blows my mind. All of the other players in this league get to just play one-on-one all game. Olivia Miles did whatever she wanted in the first half. The second half, they blitzed her. She had 5 points. They blitzed her out of every ball screen action, and she only had 5 points in the second half.
98-100, down by 2 final minutes, Caitlin Clark dribbling at the top of the floor with a shot to tie the game or take the lead. And instead of a bucket, Aliyah Boston travels and the entire momentum evaporates in one careless moment. A sequence so painful it felt like watching a 5-game winning streak die in real time. Because that's exactly what happened when the Indiana Fever lost 108-100 against the Minnesota Lynx, the best team in this league. And this wasn't just another loss. It was a masterclass in how coaching miscalculations and delayed adjustments can cost you everything when you need it most.
Game was lost. The score is 98-100. Caitlin Clark pushing the ball down the floor with a chance to tie it or take the lead. She runs a ball screen action with Aliyah Boston. Caitlin Clark gets doubled, kicks it out to Aliyah Boston, wide open at the three-point line. She doesn't shoot it. Instead, she travels. The Indiana Fever lose 108-100 to the best team in the league, the Minnesota Lynx. We have got to break it down, man. Welcome to Keep the Vision. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share the channel, hit the bell notification, hype the video. That'd be greatly appreciated. I am pissed. I'm pissed off. This is embarrassing. This was embarrassing.
Welcome to Hoops Pilled TV. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time, because we break down the moments that define these teams and the decisions that haunt coaches late at night. So hit that subscribe button, smash the like, and let's dive into the Indiana Fever's most frustrating loss of the season. Here's the thing that made this loss so much worse than the final score suggests. The Fever scored 100 points against the league's strongest defensive unit. Caitlin Clark dropped a double-double with 19 points and 10 assists. Kelsey Mitchell erupted for 37 points from the bench. That's 56 combined points from Indiana's backcourt on most nights. That's enough to win convincingly. But Minnesota's guards dismantled the Fever defense so badly that all that offensive firepower meant absolutely nothing. Olivia Miles scored 28 points and Courtney Williams chipped in 27, and the real problem wasn't Indiana's offense at all. It was Stephanie White's complete inability to see what was happening on the other end until 23 minutes had already disappeared from the first half.
Man, this came down to, and I said it before the game, the Indiana Fever backcourt would have to outplay the Minnesota Lynx backcourt. That didn't happen. Caitlin Clark, 19 points, 10 assists, double-double, not enough. Kelsey Mitchell lit it up, 37. But between Olivia Miles and Courtney Williams, I mean, they both had 20. Olivia Miles had 28. Courtney Williams had 27. I mean, it's. Now, I will say this. The Minnesota Lynx is the best team in the league, and they showed why. Nafisa Collier, get busy. Kayla McBride. Everybody is a threat, which is why it makes it difficult to double somebody like Olivia Miles. Olivia Miles was 11 of 14, 3 of 6 from 3, 28.6 assists. She looked like the best player on the floor, especially in the first half. Kelsey Mitchell picked it up again in the second half. Had a big first half, big second half. Kelsey Mitchell did her thing. Courtney Williams stepped up for the Minnesota Lynx. 12 of 20, 27 points, 5 assists.
The basic defensive plan was broken within the opening minutes, and everyone knew it. The Fever were icing ball screens, sending guards out to the three-point line and watching Olivia Miles get the exact read she wanted every single possession. Layup after layup after layup, Miles was moving downhill without any resistance. No traps coming early, no help defense climbing high enough to make her uncomfortable. Just clean lanes and indecisive rotations that left her with a simple choice tree every time. Turn the corner, attack, and finish before any help arrived. And she executed that script perfectly because Indiana wasn't forcing her to do anything difficult. Their weak side defenders kept sinking deeper into the paint trying to protect the rim, while Minnesota's shooters gained more and more space.
Caitlin Clark, 8 of 18, just 2 of 9 from 3, 19 points and 10 assists. She did have a double-double, but I would have liked for her to be even a little bit more aggressive. I think she was getting whatever she wanted in the mid-range. Her mid-range is clicking. But the Minnesota Lynx weren't going to let her get whatever she wanted. Kelsey Mitchell was rolling. Caitlin kept feeding her. And I mean, ultimately, you get 19 and 10 out of Caitlin. You get 37 out of Kelsey. That's a good enough game from your backcourt possession. Aliyah Boston's ass can't make layups. She was 7 of 14 from the floor, 1 of 4 from 3. The girl missed so many damn layups. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous how many layups she's missing. For the second straight game, Michaela Timpson, I love the way you played. You competed your ass off versus Nafisa Collier. 3 of 4. You had 7 points. Love what Michaela Timpson did. She needs to teach Aliyah Boston how to make layups. I'm not happy with what I got out of Aliyah Boston today.
What's infuriating about this dynamic is that Indiana eventually figured it out. In the second half, when Stephanie White finally decided to blitz Miles on the ball screen, everything changed dramatically. Miles went from 23 first-half points down to just 5 points after halftime. The coverage shift forced her to give up the ball earlier, to trust her teammates instead of relying on her own playmaking. The Fever could have been implementing this adjustment the entire game, but chose to wait until Minnesota had already built their confidence, their lead, and their rhythm. That's not a defensive scheme problem, that's a coaching problem, and there's an enormous difference between the two.
Man, Indiana Fever, they fought back, fought hard. Ultimately, overall, Olivia Miles was just too much in the first half, and it took too long to make an adjustment. She dominated this game. Her and Courtney Williams in that backcourt. But overall, the Minnesota Lynx are the better team. Okay, they're the best team in the league for a reason, and the Minnesota Lynx.
Kelsey Mitchell's 37-point explosion showed that Indiana had the offensive capability to stay in this game even after surrendering efficient possession after efficient possession early on. The Fever weren't getting blown out because their guards couldn't produce. They were getting chased because their defense was fundamentally unprepared. But Mitchell's scoring kept them close enough that they could fight back in the second half. She was making tough shots and creating for herself when the Fever needed someone to carry the offensive load. And she did exactly that. Yet even 37 points from one player couldn't overcome the structural problems they'd allowed Minnesota to establish in those critical early moments. The offensive rebounding disparity tells you everything you need to know about Indiana's second-half collapse. The Fever gave up 11 offensive rebounds while grabbing only 5 themselves. Every missed shot by Minnesota turned into another possession, another chance to execute their system, another opportunity for Miles or Williams to keep probing the defense. Those extra possessions affect pace. They drain team fatigue. They reduce the number of attacking opportunities Indiana could mount before Minnesota's defense became too organized to break down. This wasn't just about losing individual possessions. It was about surrendering control of the game's rhythm entirely. Raven Johnson's insertion into the game is the moment that really proves how disorganized the rotation thinking was. She hadn't played meaningful minutes in the previous 6 or 7 games. And then suddenly she's matched up against Olivia Miles after Miles had already taken control of the game. That's not developing a player, that's not making a calculated risk based on information, that's panic coaching, throwing something at the wall hoping it sticks. And it failed spectacularly because Johnson wasn't prepared for that assignment, and the game situation didn't allow for learning on the job. There are no timeouts for trial and error against an elite team with this kind of scoring punch. The real problem with Stephanie White's approach wasn't just the initial defensive scheme. It was the belief that you could make adjustments after one player had already established themselves as a threat. Basketball doesn't work that way at this level. Once Olivia Miles scored 15-20 points in the first quarter, the decision had already been made. The tone of the game had been set. Minnesota knew their read was working. Their confidence was built. And even when Indiana finally tightened things up defensively, they were trying to climb out of a hole they created themselves. You don't spot the league's best team a 15-point advantage and expect to overcome coaching mistakes. That's fantasy basketball thinking. The Indiana Fever proved something important in that second-half comeback attempt. They showed they weren't completely overmatched. Caitlin Clark was still creating advantages, Mitchell was still scoring at elite levels, and Boston was still anchoring the floor if the defensive principles had been in place from the opening tip. If the rotations had clarity from minute 1, if the blitzing scheme had started as plan instead of plan Z. The Fever might have won this game or at least made it significantly more difficult for Minnesota. But basketball is played with the decisions you make, not the decisions you wish you'd made. And White's coaching philosophy was exposed as too passive, too slow to react, and too willing to wait for visual confirmation before making changes. The specific late-game sequence that sealed this loss is worth examining in excruciating detail because it shows the difference between competing with an elite team and actually closing against one. Indiana trailed 100-98. They'd clawed back into position for the win. Clark attacks the paint, draws a double team, and finds Aliyah Boston with space at the top of the floor. This is the moment, this is when you stay composed and execute the simplest read. But Boston hesitated, second-guessed herself, and traveled not just a turnover, but a turnover in the most visible moment of the game. That travel immediately gets analyzed, criticized, and remembered. But it was just one symptom of a larger problem. Aliyah Boston's late-game mistakes extended beyond the travel. After the Lynx attacked the rim with McBride, Indiana's defense actually forces a miss. This is important, the scheme worked. They created a stop, but stops aren't complete until someone controls the rebound. Boston is positioned to protect the glass, and she doesn't finish the job. Another loose ball, another Minnesota possession, another opportunity squandered for Indiana. These two errors came in the most pressure-filled moments, but they weren't the root cause of the loss. They were symptoms of a team that never assembled all its components at the right time. Early the scheme failed, in the middle the rotations lacked clarity, and late the execution fell apart. Against an average opponent in this league, surviving two of those problems might still be possible. Maybe you escape with a win even if your defense is confused for 15 minutes. Or if your coaching staff makes questionable rotation calls, but against Minnesota, these teams don't get that margin for error. The Lynx are loaded, disciplined, and they punish mistakes at every level. They have Olivia Miles creating in transition, Courtney Williams thriving off ball movement, Kayla McBride hitting spot-up threes, and a front court that rebounds and defends with purpose. Asking any team to overcome one major breakdown against Minnesota is already asking a lot. Asking them to overcome three separate breakdowns across different phases is essentially asking them to play a perfect game. The takeaway from this loss isn't that Indiana can't compete with Minnesota. It's that Indiana needs to compete differently and better from the opening tip. Caitlin Clark and Kelsey Mitchell proved they can both produce at elite levels. The defense showed in the second half that they had adjustments available, but coaching decisions have to be sharper, rotation thinking has to be clearer. And players like Aliyah Boston can't hesitate in moments when decisiveness is all that separates a dramatic comeback from another frustrating loss. Stephanie White deserves criticism for how long she waited to adjust. But the players also deserve criticism for failing to execute when the game was finally in their hands. This wasn't one person's fault. It was a collective failure across every layer of the game. The reality of playing the Minnesota Lynx in a playoff series is that these kinds of problems get magnified. You don't get 5 games to figure it out, you get 7 games maximum. And if you're still adjusting defensively after 2 games, you're already down and probably done. Indiana has the talent to challenge Minnesota, but talent alone doesn't solve possession-to-possession problems. It doesn't fix coaching decisions, and it doesn't guarantee late-game execution. The Fever need faster recognition from the bench, cleaner decisions from the floor, and a fundamental shift in how seriously they take defending the league's elite guards. Because 5-game winning streaks only matter if you can sustain them against the teams that actually count. And right now, Minnesota is the team that counts, and Indiana wasn't ready.